It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Hey, everybody. We're here with our podcasters. Say hello and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Elsta Hura.
Hi, I'm Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Kyle Bacher, and today we're going to talk about going slow in a hurry. So one of my favorite quotes of all time was Wyatt Earp, which you may have seen in several movies, one of them being called Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, I never met him.
The quote is, "Fast is fine, but accuracy is final. In a gunfight, you need to take your time in a hurry." So it's being deliberate, but you got to move fast, but not too fast. You have to stay within your capabilities. So if you can go fast and still aim and shoot, then you're doing good. Because it's the accuracy that's important.
Let's take it off of the fighting aspect and bring it to the working aspect.
Yeah.
And I have a quick question. L, how many software projects do you think Wyatt Earp was involved in?
I mean, physically or in spirit?
So before you
none.
before you successfully undermine the topic,
Successfully.
so
Nothing wrong with bringing the sass. Sass has a very good place in programming.
that's why I sass back. Okay, so sometimes you're moving fast. You got stuff coming in right and left. You got a deadlines to hit. You're in scramble mode, but you still need to do good work. So
We've all talked about our failures in production, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And how that probably came about from being fast and not as deliberate as we chose. And that we learned valuable lessons to be fast, but then to look twice and say, is this really doing what I think it's doing?
so
And also to rejoice whenever we don't get production credentials too.
Yes.
Because we've been there and know that isn't necessarily a good idea. So if we don't get it, it's like, yes, I'm guaranteed not to make that mistake again.
every time I've screwed something up, I did have that feeling that I was maybe going too fast. I was maybe
totally.
But I just went ahead anyway.
Yeah.
Hit that moment where I don't know about this. You get your gut feeling is saying, no, you're not ready yet. And you're like, yeah, but why not? I'll push this button.
The
hit delete.
adrenaline and the hope is overriding your sense of security and reliability. Peter?
There's this weird balance.
See, and I want to push back a little bit on that, Kyle. Things that I've done in a production environment that were wrong were things that I had no trepidation about. I was hard charging. I was like, this. Oh no! Now we got to go to backup.
So you failed with certainty.
I was certain that I had
confidence.
Yep.
This is the thing.
This is the query I want. I've highlighted the appropriate things. And now I know to say, are you sure you have your where clause in correctly? Yes, no, okay. Yeah.
What's up,
Testing.
Chad?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's I'm not a big we talk about deadlines, but then what does that actually mean, right? Oh, we missed a deadline. So we've been working on this project for a year and a half. We said June 1st. What happens on June 2nd, right? If our deadline is June 1st, if we guessed at a deadline a year and a half ago, and we've communicated appropriately that the deadline is a little bit unrealistic given new information, and you still miss it, there's still people attached to it, and then you're on June 1st, you're on June 2nd, then what? Does everybody just go home nah, we keep working. So I'm like not the fast part of it. It's, it's a nice idea, but it's not really a thing that I care about as much anymore. Like, it's do it right? Don't do it fast. Just be very deliberate early on about requirements.
That's exactly the quote.
No, it's be deliberate fast.
You're describing the quote.
I am. Listen, me and noted software architect Wyatt Earp have a lot of key differences in our philosophies, and that might be one of them. It is. He's like, you got to be deliberate fast, and I'm like, take the fast part out of it. Like, just be deliberate, or you're gonna goof up, right? There's no world where you just throttle down and go as fast as you can, and don't cause yourself more rework months later anyway. Be deliberate.
Al, I got a question for you. How many
I'll answer this one.
gunfights do you think Chad has been in?
Good half a dozen.
So
Chad is still here means he's good at it.
there's this balance between speed and perfection. What is good enough? How much time do you have? Like, do you have enough time to make it decent enough versus making it perfect? I think we fill space. So if you have a day to do something, it's going to take you a day to do it. Possibly. If it's longer than a day, you're going to rush and do it in a day. But if it's less time than a day, you might drag it out or just keep working on it because you have the time, and then polishing and perfecting. And I think there's a lot to be said for just moving forward. Sometimes you just have to blaze trail. I heard some really good advice on writing, and he was a writer for The Simpsons and The New Yorker, and he said, just write it as fast and sloppy as you can, because it's much easier and way more fun to revise something than it is to write something. So it's kind of that, I don't know how this applies, but
I was going to say, I feel that's very true with English papers. I'm not so sure that it's true with software papers.
I was going to say the same thing. Like, you write something. I mean, when you write code, if you apply that same analogy to our career path, some of your sloppy writing is going to make it into production, right?
Right.
You're going to forget something. So
Guilty.
I have a different view on it, and it's not necessarily fast, but I'm more of a 75% correct kind of guy, right? Get it to a point where I think it's 75% right, and then get it in front of whoever you're building your tool for, right? Whoever you're building your project for, your product, whatever we want to call it. Get it in front of them and have them tell you, this is, here's our first cut. It's not perfect. We know. Tell me what's wrong, right? Get to that point as quick as you can, deliberately, but quick, and then go back and revise. I don't know, Al, what do you think? What do you do?
I agree. I mean, that's one of the things we've talked about in other episodes with, when we're saying we find agile methodology to be useful, it is about that, having an MVP, having something that you can get feedback over and over and over and over, so you can continue refining, as opposed to developing something over 9 months and then showing the audience and they go, well, I asked for a tire swing. Why did you build me a treehouse? that classic cartoon. So I agree with you, Chad. I think that's a good analogy or parallel situation to the quote that we're talking about, where you are moving fast in that you're creating a deliverable quickly, but you're getting feedback on it a lot more quickly, so that you can make sure that the quote unquote final product is as good as it can be.
Yeah.
I think this really applies, and we can go back to this, Peter, if you wanted to add. But reading emails, like if you go too fast, you miss things, you read things wrong. You might read things in the wrong order. And that costs like extra communications. It costs rework, mistakes. Like you might answer something that's already been answered because you started at the bottom of your timeline instead of starting at the top and reading your email backwards. So you see the first, like the last response to something, or informational things about a rollout, stuff you have to do. You know, I try to craft emails to prevent questions and to make sure people do things correctly. And I have yet to do it successfully. And I think part of that might be like, am I writing too much information? Should I be spreading this out in smaller chunks? Or are people just reading too fast? You know, like that I said it was going to happen 5 o'clock, and you're asking me 2 hours before that why it's not working for them. And that was in the first line of the message in bold. Like that's not me.
Kyle,
That's
I do try to read the message again before I ask the question, but sometimes I just throw it out there, to be fair. And yes, I do go a little bit fast on some of those where it's like, I just need the answer now. I see you're online. I'm going to hit Slack instead of go through my email and find the thing that Kyle posted 4 days ago telling me about the future and I ignored it 4 days ago, but I know what's happening today. I got that much in my head. And so now I want to know the answer now. But
You know what I did this week? I got an email that said, hey, our COVID status is going from this to this. Probably should have actually opened it because I got all the information I needed from the subject line. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Let's go. Turns out I should have opened that. Just a little side note. Yes, that would have been great information to put in the subject line for those of us that are just looking at subjects only. Yeah.
But do you think, Chad, because I think there are a couple different things that we're touching on, and to kind of get it back to this idea of fast versus accuracy. Like, are you not reading the emails because you're wanting to get through your emails in 30 seconds?
I'm not reading my emails because I don't read emails. I just don't.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at that. I'm more of a like, you know, when we do requirements gathering and when we try to understand what requirements are and when we try to be fast based on information that we have in front of us, sorting through email isn't really the way to do that, right? We get the information out there in a place that makes sense. So yes,
So have you had an experience when you either internally or externally have been rushed through requirements gathering and that has gone, you know, flawlessly?
A little bit. Like I can't remember a time. So I've been doing the 75% thing for such a long time that I've kind of fallen into that habit, right? And gosh, I really can't remember it's been more than a decade since I've not done that. And I don't remember how horrible that used to be.
That's
right.
good.
And
that's good.
Yeah. So like, and basically what we're talking about is waterfall stuff, right? Like where you have to, you know, you get all of your stuff up front, you understand everything that's going into it, and you got to digest all of that information and then try to execute on that quickly, as opposed to what we do nowadays. What I think a lot of folks do, get close, iterate over it nonstop until you've got a viable product in front of you.
Well, and I think going back, like a pure waterfall, like not the blend that we've all found ourselves in some places where
Scrumfall
or yes, water pool or whatever you want to call it. There's a few names for it. It happens a lot.
Agile, because we're going to build the roof first and then the rest of the house.
Which is fine if you have the proper equipment to lift the roof up into place and build the rest of the house there, and the person decides that the roof is the right shape and size that they were looking for. But that tends not to be the case. But in like a traditional waterfall, you would spend months up front having the discussions about, does this button color need to be blue, aqua, marine? Is it FC,
Calypso.
FC, FC, or is it FD, FD, FD? All of those kinds of discussions. You would have those up front and go and make hard, fast decisions that says it will absolutely be this thing. And that's what all the developers work towards. And then you'd get to the end, and then the person would say, well, you know, I kind of like that other color better. Now that I see it, I like that other color better. And
No,
so
that was already decided. So
right. It was
can't
decided
change
9
it
months
now.
ago.
It was decided.
Right.
And it's
So you're stuck.
Yeah, I can't imagine going back to that. Like really, like it just it's not fun. And the other part of that too is that, and not to harp too much on practices that we practice these days, practices that we whatever. Anyway, not to harp too much on that, but like usually when we do it the way we do it now, we have context that we just talked about recently, right?
Right.
Not 6 months ago, not 9 months ago. I can't remember how we kept that all in our heads. You know, like here's all of the requirements, here's everything that we talked about 9 months ago. And when we pick up a feature to be developed, you know, here's documentation for it. You can refresh your memory.
I have this piece of paper with your signature that says this is the blue that you agreed to 9 months ago.
Yeah, but
okay, so what?
You don't have the conversation in your head, at least,
right.
You know, unless you're superhuman. But like you don't have all of the metadata around that decision in front of you or in top of mind. So,
which I think is important to call out, because like whenever I think about the times when I have perhaps gone too fast and inaccurately, it's been either because there's like emotional overload because somebody's saying it's broken in production, fix it now, is it done yet, or I don't have the context around it. So I don't know that, for example, running an update statement in production will work, but in the process of that, it could back up other transactions that happen to be going on. So yeah, I think context is a really good call out, Chad, because I think that is one of the reasons why going too fast causes issues.
And running an update that then gets overwritten by the automated process that happens at midnight anyway.
Yeah.
That was where the break actually occurred. Doesn't really help either. So
I want to dial this back to like in the moment, like throughout your day. You're trying to you have the things you want to do, the things you're trying to do. Then you have the incidental distractions of life. Things are going to come up. Things are going to pull you away. So in the day of work, when you're reading and responding and communicating, it can be frantic. It can be, I've got 10 Slack messages for people. 5 of them have an urgent issue. And I've got emails that I haven't read yet that have tasks, and it's just this, okay, I have this cloud of things in front of me. And so I speed up. And but then you speed up to the point where you're screwing things up.
Right.
Sure.
And you want to, somebody's reaching out to you for help, and you're trying to do tech support via Slack. And tech support requires a lot of back and forth. Did you do this? Did you do that? What does this look like? What happens if? Try this, try this. And I don't like doing tech support via text.
More importantly, tech support via text with someone who doesn't speak the same context that you do.
Right.
Like I'm thinking of we're trying to solve problems with my parents on their computer. You know, the context there is dramatically different.
That was the sigh of knowing.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you know, do you see that button there? Well,
Mhm.
I called it a button, but really it was a link, or really it was a this or that. And that is where some of our modern tools have really helped out with screen sharing and things like that. You can say, click that orange thing. Nope, nope, nope. Down, down. Yes, that one.
Yeah.
That
Or
and takes 2
click
seconds.
this thing that I send you, and I will take control and do it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that in those situations where you find yourself moving too fast, that's when you have to like take that moment and go, hang on. You're getting ahead of yourself. You're not working the way you normally do.
But
You're
sometimes we
taking
just like
shortcuts.
type quick answers, right?
Like
Mhm.
that's where it's taking your time in a hurry. It's that deliberate act of slowing yourself down and possibly making space. Maybe not everything has to be done or answered right away. Somebody sent you a message. It's what if I answer this tomorrow? What if I didn't get to this till the end of the day and it just sat there? You know, is this person staring at Slack, waiting for me to respond?
Waiting for Kyle typing to show up.
Yep, Kyle Buckery is
Oh,
typing.
yeah, and that's no guarantee that anything's going to happen. I've learned that. Just because someone's typing does not mean they're answering. It means they
No.
clicked in there and maybe they started to say something and they thought, well, now I
should have
better
fresh coffee
think
for
about
this.
this and do these other things first. But I think that's the time where you need to go fast, you need to get stuff done, but you need to take the time you need to not screw everything up. And because if you do, you're adding time, you're adding tasks, you're adding overhead, you're creating work for yourself, you're possibly creating work for someone else, you're possibly wasting their time. Um, Quick, sloppy answers when you don't really understand the questions. Um, things like that. You don't quite get it, but you read a little bit and went, I know what this is. And so you fire back something. Um, and you're at a basketball game on your phone and you just fire off a response. It's
Why
like,
basketball?
I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
You're at a Twins game. Come on.
You could be at the mall buying some soup. I don't know what's going on,
Yes,
but
absolutely.
like, are you in a position, are you in the right spot to be doing things? Is this the right time? Yeah, but I am also like trying to entertain my kids.
Is the
I
better
can't
response?
focus.
Yeah, is the better response to say, I'm away from any computer right now. I will try to get to this as soon as I can at time in the
Yeah,
future. Give them a target that's reasonable for you to hit.
right. That's the key, is the no response. Like, I'm now telling you to stop looking at Slack
Right.
for the response until tomorrow, later on, or whatever.
Yes.
I want to take the time to look into this for you. Let me get back to you tomorrow.
So it seems like a lot of it is about, okay, how do you recognize and prevent yourself from getting overwhelmed and overloaded? So, Chad, I'm wondering, I feel like, and this is just my completely unbiased interpretation, but I feel like you have like 10 conversations in Slack going at once.
Yes.
So
Usually.
how do you how does that not overwhelm you so that you're not giving terse answers to folks, or how do you stay engaged without it just being like, okay, I just need to continue this conversation so that I can continue this other conversation?
Yeah, I mean, as far as that stuff goes, so there's two parts of that, right? Like, one, I should be, in the role that I have on projects that I'll get billed out to, that should be kind of what I do that so that, look, like developers, I mean, if a guy's writing an API, I don't want him to have 10 Slack messages. I'd very much appreciate that dude being able to focus on one thing and not have to constantly switch context in his head all the time. For me, and for my co-lead on the project, we always assume like our days are just going to be interrupt driven messes, right? No matter how well we try to plan it out, no matter what we do, that's just kind of the gig. The one thing that I do, if anybody has a question and I don't know the answer off the top of my head and I'm not confident in the response, I stop all of the other ones and I say, hey, I'm going to call you really quick, right? Like, and that for me is intentional. It's like, okay, you've got now you have my full attention. We'll walk through whatever. And that's how I solve that. If I have 10 conversations, I mean, hopefully at this point, I know my problem domain well enough where I can whip off, relatively quick answers to all of those things. And that's when I start a gig, that's kind of what I really, really try to do for the first few months is get a deep understanding of everything going on so that one, I can ask good questions, but two, I'll be able to re-explain it to a guy that might just need to write an endpoint for a certain problem, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. If I need to focus, I just call whoever. I'm like, hey, call me, or I just hit the video chat button right away and see like, all right, hey,
Incoming.
yeah.
Wait, I'm not ready yet. Stop.
No, I mean, once in a while you get that, but most of the time it's we have a rapport on the team now where it's expected. Like, Chad, if I start typing and then I just go and stop and go and stop, they know, okay, this means he's just going to call me usually, right? Like that's where that ends up. I don't know. Did I answer your question, Al? Okay.
Yeah, I think you did. Just because it kind of highlighted how you have kind of strategies in place to recognize like, okay, this is going to take more attention. I'm going to block out the other stuff for the moment and focus in and do a deeper dive on this particular thing. I also think it was really good for you to call out just if you go in knowing that my day's going to be a lot of interruptions or a lot of like triaging, then that can make you a lot more resilient towards that than if you're like, I'm going to have 8 hours of heads down coding.
Well,
yes, never happened.
And we sign up for that, right? Like we realize the hard thing for me is making sure other folks understand that, right? Like we have certain cadences, and we measure, for better or worse, certain folks in an organization will measure productivity by how many story points did this guy complete or whatever, and then mine's like way down here. And it's always a challenge for folks that don't understand the role to understand that, like, well, that's by design, right? Like everybody, we try to deliver fairly consistent messaging. Me and my buddy on the project don't always succeed at that. Sometimes we give polar opposite answers and then we both get called. All right, guys, you fight it out and you tell us what to do, right? But that's where we start. We try to, just establish, hey, our commitment to the project is to make sure that, there is a certain level of, base level understanding about the problem, the domain, the approach, the tech stack, the whole 9 yards. And so far it's worked out well on this gig and my previous gig. So fingers crossed that it continues to do so. Yeah.
Another thing you said, Chad, that made me think was sort of the go, stop, go, I'm going to have a call, right? And that's sort of the going fast, but then being deliberate about it, knowing that the fast is not the answer, that the deliberate call is the better thing to do at that point. And obviously there are times where you go fast, throw off a quick response to someone and have no problem with it because you're sure of the answer and you know that that's all the information that person needs. But if you're kind of hesitant, then you're actually filtering yourself. And I think we've all done that where we'd like, I'm going to type out this whole big paragraph. I'm going to type out a whole nother different paragraph. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have a phone call because this is horrible.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I've started to do. I practice that a lot. Like you get a lot of messages from me, but they're like one or two. Like nobody reads paragraphs. If I see paragraphs, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that, right?
You don't
It's
even
quick-
open email messages.
barely. I
It's
read
got
your
to be in the
subject.
subject
Bad
or it
at
doesn't
it.
happen.
Yeah.
I'll read your subject line, and I'd be delighted to. I'm not going to open your email message.
Yeah. He's bad at it the way that a mule that refuses to move is bad at walking.
Is that another Wyatt Earp quote?
It really sounds like Wyatt,
It does.
but I'm not sure.
That
I
might
think
have
though
been Doc
that's
Holliday.
right there, the stopping yourself and getting on the phone and then having a successful call. Like you've had that interaction,
A perfect
and
phone call, if you would.
figured it out. Yeah. And then you can move on. You've got all the information, you've asked the questions, you've answered, you provided feedback, you achieved equilibrium of understanding.
Had a
You
good
got
back
what you
and forth.
needed. You've been in interactions where it seemed like the person I was talking to was in a hurry to get away from me. Now you can chat. This is where Chad would say, I bet you get that a lot. No. It's like,
Kyle's punchy
no,
today.
I'm trying to tell you what to do, like what the task is, and give you all the information you need to do it. And you're telling me that you got it, that you're good to go. And I'm
Right.
only halfway through.
Look, boss, I know how to build a roof. I'm going to go build that roof right now. but we should have some walls first. No. I got the roof. Got it all.
Yeah.
I know you said roof. I got it.
Yeah. Do you know what kind of shingles we're using?
I'm building the roof.
30 year.
The
Yeah.
same kind I always use when I
Right.
build roofs.
Do you know what the roof pitch needs to be for the snow load for Minnesota?
It's the kind I'm building, man. It's flat. It's perfectly flat, and I put shingles on it, and it leaks like crazy. But that's the way I make roofs. I'm gonna go get started on that right now.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've had that happen where it's like, I know you don't got this and you're just trying to be done. And I understand that. And
They're trying to be fast.
I've been on the other side of that where it's like, I think I know, I think I've got it. And then I go away and try to do it. I successfully escape with my partial knowledge set and then try to do what they want me to do and then fail at it or get to a point where I'm stuck because I don't have all the information I need. And then I have to go back and continue to have that conversation with my hat in my hand. Yeah.
But sometimes it's better to say, let me take my 75% stab at it, right? Like Chad's talked about. Like I'm gonna go. If you give me more information now, I don't think I'm gonna be better at the 75%. I'm gonna take a stab at it, and we're gonna revisit it. So don't worry. I'm going to listen to more of your opinions and more of your thoughts, but let me get started, because if I take down everything, we're back into that waterfall model, and you're going to see it, and you're going to not like the color blue, and we're going to have to redo it again. So
I think that especially for creative endeavors where it's a design, it's a look of something, it's a type of layout, like you need that check-in. Okay, I need enough information to get started to where I can come back to you and say, am I going in the right direction? Is this heading where you want it to be?
Design Wordle.
I don't want to get to the end and have you say the whole thing is wrong and you spent a week on it. Right. I need to check in and go, okay, these are the colors.
And I don't know how
this is a
designers
sketch
do it.
of the layout. Okay, this is the this is what the final version will look like. but it's not polished. It's just a rough sketch. So I think that it depends on what you're doing, but I think knowing when it's time to pick up the phone, knowing when it's time to ask more questions, knowing when you're not there yet, you're not done with the call, you don't have all the information. And it's like that on the other side where the person that's telling you they want something isn't giving you all the information. And it's like you need to kind of keep them talking, keep them answering questions. You know, I've worked on dashboards before for different companies. We want a dashboard to tell us like how this is going. It's like, well, okay, what do you want on it?
The important information.
Yeah. Well,
What
what
am I
is
gonna
that?
tell you what's
What
important?
are the magic numbers? How are we measuring? How are we, you know, that's a challenge.
I don't know yet.
Because they might not know. That's the I know it, I'll know it when I see it approach. And then you're like, is this your card? Nope. Is this your card? Yep. Well, it's the right suit, but it's the wrong card.
Hopefully we get to the right card
Yeah.
eventually.
Chad, in your role, you don't have the luxury of like staying in your flow state. Like you're a lead, so you have to kind of keep an eye on things.
Oh yeah. There's no world where, you know, where I just have blocked off 4 hours, right? I mean, I try every once in a while and I pat myself on the back for trying and being adorable about it. But it never really works out. And it's not, I don't know, it's just now that everybody understands that's what the role is, and that's, you know, we're constantly going to be available. Like me and my other buddy on the project, we're never going to say no. We can't talk to you right now, right? Like that's just
Right.
that's not reality. So we do our best, but the other thing is like we've been doing this for quite a while now, and so a lot of the problems that we come across, like, you know, these are problems that we've experienced in our careers now, and now we have a lot of experience. So it doesn't, you know, I don't necessarily need a flow anymore to whip out a couple of quickie solutions. And that's not me bragging. That's just mostly me being set in my ways and following established patterns and being grumpy about it. Like we're doing it this way. Yeah, I was able to explain that whole context switching problem pretty well by saying, like, this is how I explain it to people, is like when you interrupt somebody and they're halfway through whatever, I keep coming back to an endpoint, right? You're halfway through writing it. It's like adding up, you know, 2 7-digit numbers in your head, right? Now you're going to add a third to it, and then interrupt somebody halfway through that mental math, right? Like they're halfway through the problem. They have to go and start over again. They have to remind themselves, oh, okay, that's where I left off, right? And that's what happens every time somebody's like, hey, do you got a second? And even the question, do you have a second, interrupts that math in your head. And you're like, oh, I wonder who, you know, whatever.
Do I have a second? I don't know.
Do I have a second? Okay, nope, I don't. And let me get back to, okay, now I carried the 3 and now I carried okay. That's, yeah.
Even writing, you're in the middle of drafting an email and you have a point you're trying to make and it's in your head and you're like writing it out and someone like walks up behind you and you feel them. You feel their aura colliding with yours. You see their shadow. They're looming. And then, but you're still writing and you're kind of, hang on a second. You know, if they answer, you just keep writing. I've done that where I've just ignored the person until I get it out. And it's like, they can see I'm writing. They can see I'm typing. They just walked up and interrupted me. I'm going to finish because I'm still in this kind of zone where I know what I need to say. And then I'll stop. Instead of stopping and dropping everything and losing my place, it's like, I'm going to take a risk here that's not my boss with this urgent thing that's on fire that needs my immediate attention, and ignore them for a minute while I finish this.
I did fib earlier. The only time I write paragraphs is I do retros, and that's I kind of do the same thing that you're talking about, Kyle. And I don't necessarily ignore people. I just close my door, right? Like if I need to get something out, So, and when I do retros, I write novels about folks if I get a request for feedback, which I enjoy doing because I always have an opinion on that. But yeah, I close my door. I try not to just, ignore folks, but it's the idea of finding a way that works to focus. And for me, that sort of thing is an off hours task, right? Like if I get asked to write any more than a couple of quick responses about the specific product that I'm building, it becomes I have to close my door, turn off Teams, kill Slack, turn my phone over.
Go dark.
So we
Yeah.
still use email.
What?
We still use email as a organization, as an industry, as a company, as a team. We still use it. And what's acceptable? Like what's an acceptable expectation when you write somebody an email? And what's an acceptable expectation for reading email? Like, I don't read emails. Well, we still use email. I'm still communicating. If I write you a letter and if I send you a notification that your house is out of compliance with our many, many rules because your gutters are not clean, and if you don't respond in a week, you'll be fined. And I don't read mail. What is the luxury you have not to read email? Or what is the expectation? I write really long emails to the person I report to, and then I go back at the top. You could ignore this and we can talk about it on Tuesday. Like, here's the thing, if you want to read it now, fine. But we can talk about it next week in our normal meeting. This doesn't have to, I need to get you the information so that you have it. I feel a responsibility to send you a report, an update, but you don't need to read it all. I just had to send it so you have it. And now I do TLDRs, too long didn't read. And a lot of times when I do that, I end up deleting the paragraph and just sending that as the message.
Does it confuse people? Where's the too long
I
stuff?
don't put the TLDR in front of it then.
Oh, okay.
But that's after I write something, I'm like, okay, I need to put a TLDR in it. And so I boil it down to be a much smaller chunk where I'm like, what's the most efficient way I can say these things? Instead of writing a story about it and putting in an anecdote and jokes. And so I try to make things short now and efficient to read, where the really important stuff is up front. And then there might be some nerds that want more details about an issue that was resolved. They might want the story of what I did. I'll include that, but people have a bailout point where, okay, I got enough information. So loading, so knowing Chad exists and how he operates.
Clear subjects.
Putting Monday in the subject line. Loading the subject line with the really important facts is going to be helpful. That's something I can do for Chad, knowing that he's just doesn't want to take the time sifting through, because there's so much garbage that comes with email. And it's like, if you expect people to read every single email, that's a lot. That's a big expectation because of all the garbage, all the noise.
Well, I mean, deconstruct that a little bit, right? Like if we're going to tell folks that, hey, Monday's the day, right?
Right.
Every single bit of information you need would say, on Monday, we're going from this status to this status. There's no meat in that sentence. There's no fat in that sentence. There's no whatever. Everything else below it is elaboration on that one fact. And you're done, right? Everybody's going to see that. Everybody's going to get it immediately. And there you go. And I try to do that as often as I can. All of the lean meat goes at the top, and then, color commentary goes below it for those that need it. And that's just the habit that I've fallen into, because I get a lot, right? I don't even respond to calendar invites anymore. I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope they show up on my calendar. And then, like I said, interrupt driven day. I see I have a meeting coming up at 1 o'clock. There you go. I'll be in the meeting at 1 o'clock.
So you're really guarding your time, and trying to be efficient. Like, that calendar is going to show up on your calendar, or that invite. If you don't respond to it, it's going to be a dotted line, kind of ghosted thing.
That's probably why Microsoft and others make that happen. Is, well, they didn't say no, so we'll make them aware that there's a meeting now.
Yeah.
So you have everything you need to function. Now, the person that sends it that wants to know who's attending, it's good for them to know that if they didn't answer, it doesn't mean they're not showing up. It just means they didn't click the box.
Well, and that's a pattern with a lot of folks, right? You know your audience, right?
Yeah.
So some of the SDG events, we add 10% because there's the 10% of people that they'll be there. They're not going to notify you, yada, yada.
So if you're not going to show up, then answer that you're not
Right.
going to be there.
Right.
Otherwise, it's kind of doesn't really matter. The meeting's going to happen. But if it's, if you are required to be there, like if we're not going to meet, if you're not showing up, then you're probably going to get some kind of a follow-up. Hey, this is happening. Are you going to show up?
So how does this relate to not going too fast?
I was going to ask.
I think
I
was going to ask.
There's a
I
quote
don't
by
really
Mark
know how
Twain.
we got here, because this
There's
is
a
more.
quote it actually applies. There's a quote by Mark Twain where he wrote something. He said, "Sorry, it's so long. I didn't have time to make it shorter." So by going too fast, you could blurt out a giant paragraph and throw in a subject and send it out. And there's people that are looking for that lean meat up front and maybe assuming they got it when they read it, and then acting according to that, and then that's where your accuracy goes out the window. Like, oh, I didn't have all the lean meat. So taking the time, going, you want to get the thing done, you want to get it sent out, but you have to take the time to front load it with the critical data. And also, I think as an organization, understanding that this is how we should be writing our emails, like critical data in the subject, and then basically a tweet-sized breakdown of the lean meat, and then the elaboration below that is not critical. Like, that's our standard for communicating with each other. Like, either that kind of probably going to happen organically.
Well, and you do have to know your audience. So
yeah.
At my current client right now, email is perhaps as good as leaving them a voicemail on your office desk phone.
Yeah.
That they may never see the blinking light for, because they'll never go into the office and they'll never pick up the phone and look at it. They prefer to communicate with Slack, and that's their preferred communication. And I don't know if it's because it's more in your face about notifications, or that if I don't get a response in 2 hours, I'm going to, hit them again in Slack, and so that they can, their inbox is so much shorter now, right? Like, I only have to remember what I'm doing for the last hour, and otherwise somebody's going to contact me again because I just didn't see it for whatever reason. So I think you have a lot of those things. Our school, on the other hand, calls, texts, and sends an email that says, go read the email.
Right.
So if you got the email, you've read it. If you got the text message that said to go read the email, you could do that. And if you got the voicemail that said go read the email, you'll go do that.
I used to get emails from my dad, who is not a computer person at all, and computers, when he first got email, it was all brand new to him, and he would send me emails, and it was perfect. In the subject line, it would just say, Chad, Dad, call me, right? That's the entire message. Again,
EOM. Yep.
zero fat in that sentence, and I'd call him.
Yeah.
Done. Love it.
But why didn't he just call you?
He didn't want to bother me. He wanted me to call him at his leisure.
At your leisure.
I am bad at responding to texts on my phone. The same way Chad is bad at email. I don't like to do it. I don't check my phone. I don't like to be tied to my phone where I got to check it all the time. And then I won't get into text conversations with people. Like a lot of times my reply is, can you just call me? But I've had friends that I'll call and they never answer, but they immediately respond to any text I send them.
Yeah. That's appropriate. I'm spoiled by the Apple ecosystem, because all my text messages come over on my MacBook here, and for me, I can't not respond to text, because clients text me now on my own text, whatever. They get a hold of me all sorts of different ways, and they know after 6 o'clock I can text Chad, and Chad will respond, and it's just become an extension of my workday, for better or mostly for worse. But it is, we have an expectation that, hey, if you really need me after whatever. I know Peter's shaking his head. It is not a great habit to get into, but it is a habit that I've gotten myself into.
It is a precedent that is very hard to walk back.
It is
almost impossible.
It is almost impossible, but not like super impossible, because I've done this for a while now, since it's been easy for me. And yeah, it is what it is. It's whatever. I hate that phrase. It is what it is. Like, it seems like it's such a dopey, 0-calorie bunch of words, but
it's just.
But if you're on the edge of your seat waiting for the meat raffle, you may or may not respond right then, right?
Actually, I will respond immediately with my meat raffle tickets. Like, they'll know all the context. Like, that's like putting all of the context in the subject line, right? Hey, I'm at the meat raffle. Like, they'll see the tickets, they'll see my beer, they'll be like, oh, okay, we know that what Chad is, and we know why we're not going to get a response for, a couple hours, if at all.
Right. So that's the response, or the no response.
This is the explanation for why you're not getting a response.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think.
I had a question for. Oh shoot! I lost it.
Don't do that.
I was mostly trying to get Elle involved in the conversation, but now I lost what I was questioning. I was going to question her about.
That's what happens when people look at my face.
No. I was.
It's the awesome hat.
Yeah.
Elle, do you want to go to the meat raffle? Elle, do you want to go to the meat raffle tonight at 5:30? I think me and my wife are going to go.
No, but thank you.
You're welcome. I think it's. I thought there was a theme tonight. I completely forgot what it was.
Beef.
Right.
Yes,
the theme is beef.
The theme is beef.
When I think of this quote, "Fast is fine, but accuracy is final." I think of like writing, typing, whatever. Like, if you remember typewriters, if you write fast and make a lot of mistakes, then you're going back and correcting them was a pain. You have to type at the rate at which you can be accurate. Otherwise, like your whatever your goal was for being fast has worked against you. It's had the opposite outcome because it takes longer. So I think in the final analysis, it's like, find the speed to which you can operate accurately. It's better, like practicing guitar, things like that. It's go slow, but play the right chords, and then the speed will come. So focus on the accuracy first, and the speed will come later. And learn to stop yourself when you're getting ahead of yourself. And then we have to learn about each other and our preferred communication methods, and how to write in this age where people don't read. Because it's true, it's not just Chad.
It's not.
As much as I'd like to single him out and blame him for the world's problems, it's no one. We scan for the highlights, we read the headlines, but no one is reading till the end. I used to put jokes at the very end, or I put bribes. If you've read this far, respond with the word pickle juice, and I will give you a $5 gift card for a cup of coffee. And if I sent it to 100 people, I'd only have to give away like 3 gift cards.
Nice.
Yeah. But it caught on. People were like, oh, I should read the whole thing because I might get something out of it. It was a trick. So awesome. Chad, what were you going to say to Al? You had a question?
He was just asking about the meat raffle.
I was going to start.
But
with
I
it was
do
going
want to
somewhere.
point out that,
Yeah.
Chad, that Kyle said you are not responsible for all the world's problems. So just, know that and celebrate that today.
I mean, I'm glad this is recorded.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Carry this with me. This is
Yeah.
proof. Well, good luck with the beef tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's beef. Good beef.
It's
ribeye.
usually a mix of beef, pork, supplied by Hackmiller's in Robbinsdale, Minnesota.
Hackmiller's, fine meats for over so many years.
Actually, I think it's 80. I think they've been there forever.
80 years.
It's a long
Yeah.
time.
So they have some aged ribeyes that are phenomenal. Aged for 79 years.
I sure hope not.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Goodbye, everybody.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you later.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.